Chapters 7 through 9 are falling off the track for me, but I want to continue giving it a chance and I would like to finish that book. I think writing fantasy is so challenging because you have to marry the craft of world building and everything else that goes in with storytelling. The language style of world building is so vastly distinct from the language style of expressing emotions and thoughts and relationship dynamics. It is very, very difficult to mesh those two styles together. There always seems to be a sort of seam that is perceived when transitioning from the world building aspect to everything else that goes on in the story. For this session, I wrote 122 words. Now I'm gonna read from The Name of the Rose. I've got some potato dauphinoise in the oven that's almost done. So while I'm waiting on that to finish up, I'm gonna read from The Name of the Rose. Today is definitely one of those cozy, moody days, bundling up, doing the least, and just decompressing and unwinding. Sybil is loafing today. Husband is loafing today. My sizzling potato dauphinoise. For this session, I wrote 84 words, and my week's total word count is 556. Another late night, another day of crazy hair, and today the full moon is in Pisces, so it is a wild and dreamy time. Last night I had a surge of inspiration yet again, and I have another concept for another project I want to work on. It's actually not really stream of conscious, but it started out from my stream of consciousness practice. I have 620 words for this project so far. I'm not sure yet how I want to approach my process for writing this project. My main priority is always going to be my first manuscript, which I am writing in every single day intuitively. So everything else kind of just fits around that. And what I've learned from many, many rounds of trial and error is that when I create constraints, I put strain on my creative process way, way too soon, and it really impedes my idea flow and just my enjoyment in writing overall. So I'm very careful about how I go about my other writing projects. But this third project that I have going on is very, very fun. I am super surprised at what it is. Obviously, it's way too early to be sharing about the details because I don't even know fully the details. I really am a pantser when it comes to writing. Like, I don't like to plan the things that I do. I would like to try to be a little bit more of a planner, but it's not something that's really natural for me. Anyways, I'm going to journal and brainstorm some ideas of what I might want to do today, and then I'm going to get to my writing. I also almost forgot, the full moon is in Pisces, like if you're looking directly out at the sky. I think per the tropical calendar, it's somewhere else. I don't know. I don't keep track of the moons based on the tropical calendar. I look at the night sky. I also had another update that I wanted to share. So my inspiration for this third project actually came from my adventures going to Goodwill and discovering this book. It's been a bit of an interesting journey reading this book. Number one, because it's not usually my style of writing, but also that there are some rather juvenile elements and aspects to the story. Not that the protagonist is young, but that the way that certain things happen or that the story is told, it's very much a lot of the story is being told rather than expressed. And that's it again, I think I mentioned in my last vlog, or was it this vlog? I mentioned earlier that fantasy is so difficult to write in because you do have to do a lot of world building, and then shifting from the language of world building to the language of conversation or dialogue or the inner processes is so different. And so it's always a very difficult integration to achieve a blend of the world building and the inner processes of the characters involved. That said, the main character is also very young, and I appreciate always being reminded of my 20s. I'm 32. So it brings me back to those times, to that decade of my life where like so much was in tumult. I was figuring out so many things. I'm really, really glad to be in my 30s because a lot of things have settled for me, and I appreciate and love the stability and just the sense of self I now have in my life. Okay, this is kind of becoming a little bit of a rambly video, but I don't care. But yeah, in my 20s, I thought about it and I was like, man, like it was like love was such an important topic. And in retrospect, it was all consuming in my 20s. I mean, I don't think about it so much consciously anymore because I am happily married, and I'm really thankful because my husband is a great man. I mean, honestly, he's better than my dreams man. And the way that we met, I mean, it was just it was a whole thing. So I'm really thankful for that. And I feel like because I'm married and I'm in a good place in my life, I sometimes forget the experiences that I've lived that so many people in that age group still really wrestle and grapple with. So though the writing is a little bit juvenile, I still think this is a rather impressive read given all of the elements involved to construct such a feat. And I challenged myself in this book because, you know, I am now rather quick to DNF, but there was something about the experience of me coming upon this book in my Goodwill adventure that made me feel like there was something special about this. So I pushed past those kind of awkward bits in the story and I continue to give this a chance, and I'm glad because I'm now at page 170, and it is through this book that I gained a lot of lessons that I will share in just a sec. I suddenly felt really dehydrated, so I'm gonna get some water. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I'm hydrated. So the lessons I gained from this book. I actually tried annotating, like permanent annotating, for the first time in my adulthood since my last ever experience permanently annotating was in high school. And I dog-eared. I was like, let me not be so precious about this book, because also I bought it for 75 cents, so it kind of felt like a steal. And not to say that like the cost determines like whether or not I write in a book, but it was the principle. At first, because I was not really vibing with this book in terms of style, I thought I would want to donate it to my little free library. And you know, I like to give books that are in generally pristine condition that I would be delighted to discover. But then I kept thinking about my experience at the Goodwill acquiring this book, and I was like, man, like, you know, this book is kind of special because of how I came upon it. The best way I can describe my experience is that from a massive pile of strewn about books, this book kind of glimmered like a gem from the heap of rubble, and it felt really magical. So then I thought, okay, how might I connect with this book that's not necessarily on the stylistic level, but more on the sentimental level? And that's when I decided to not be so precious and annotate and try my hand at it, because, you know, I'm just not a permanent annotator. And I'll have to say, it was fun. Also, dog earring felt so illegal, but I did it and I'm really happy with it. I'm happy with the aesthetic of it, and also it just now feels like, okay, I'm definitely now keeping this book because I have written something personal in it. And then the idea for my third project came about, and I was like, ooh, like that would be fun to capture that kind of experience in a scene of a story. I'll share what I dog-eared and annotated. So on page 161, I'm going to read some context lines first, and then I'll read what I underlined. Elagby was the outlier, and perhaps there was no greater proof that Taliesin was his daughter, because there was a small part of her that was curious about it. And this is where I underlined. About how it felt to love somebody so much that you could defy tradition or leave behind everything you had ever known. That resonated because it surfaced some memories of my own experiences abandoning tradition. And while I'm in a good place now in the aftermath of making those kinds of choices, during my 20s, it was a very, very difficult and painful time breaking from tradition. And I realized that I have taken my experiences for granted because that was really, really hard to do. And I never have really fully given myself credit for that. So it made me rethink about my own life experiences and have a moment of self-appreciation, which I realize I also don't do a lot of consciously. It's kind of, you know, always in the back burner that I appreciate myself, I take care of myself, but it's not something I do rather actively. And I thought, wow, this is actually like a really beautiful moment. So I'm really glad for this, and that's what I have to share. I'm going to now get to my journaling and then get to my writing, and then I will update you in a little bit. For this session, I wrote 81 words. I am very happy with where I ended off on in my manuscript, so I'm going to stop here, enjoy the high, and I'm going to get into some more reading. Going to end this vlog here, and I will see you in the next one.